Yes, hello and welcome. And as you can hear, my voice is not very excitable as it usually is. It is season 1, episode 18 of the post-game show versus the Packers. Um, this is not just us breaking down the game, it's a chance for us to all get together and heal. I think that's the best way to put it.
Way more than that.
It's the healing podcast where we all huddle together and we find a way to get through it. So yeah, apart from that, guys, you guys all right? How was the weekend? I know we'll get to the game and how you feel about that in a moment, but generalistically,
Yeah, it's all right. Went and talked Alton Towers, first time in 20 years. Had a good laugh.
Yeah, I seen that. So did you cry in the end going on the rides?
Pissed myself. Not about cry.
Brilliant.
Oh well, anyway, we'll get into this because we got quite a bit to get through on the loss. But we all know it happened. We played the Packers at home in AT&T and we lost. A bit more, I think this loss seems to feel a bit more emotional than the Saints game, because I think a lot of people said, we'll lose to the Saints because the Saints are generally a good team top to bottom, but this game felt like we was out there to win it. But as you know, we'll break through it now and find out what went wrong. But just on a quick note, injuries. We did have Lyle Collins, who went out of the game with an MCL. He's had the MRI. Waiting for a bit more news, but it doesn't sound like it's too serious. On the plus note, Brandon Knight came in during that game. He actually held up quite well, which is a bit of a surprise. He kind of shocked me. But for you guys, let's look at the offense. I think we'll go with you, Jamie. Who's your offensive player of the game this week?
I think it's quite kind of hard, isn't it? Just because of how the whole team played. But I'm going to go with Gallup just for the fact that he come back from injury. He had a pretty productive game, which when you kind of look at the scoreline and essentially how dominant the Packers ended up being, he had a pretty good game, and he came back in and didn't need too many snaps to find his rhythm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if we go take a look, I mean, Gallup, he came away with a touchdown and he had over 100 yards. So I think it's safe to say that the knee injury is past him.
I think if it wouldn't have been for the kind of drop that turned into an interception from Cooper, I think I would have gone with him. But that was just a killer play, and it seemed such an easy catch for him, so I think that's why I went with Gallup.
Okay. What about you then, Reg? Who's your offensive MVP for this game?
Is it too shitty of me to say Aaron Jones?
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, like pick the best of a crap situation. I'm probably just going to go Coop, really, because he was the only person that really seemed to be playing reasonably well. I mean, obviously the muff catch that led to an interception aside, I mean, he went on from that to have a career game. He was burning pretty much anyone they put across from him. It was the kind of game where really that should have been 200 and however many yards plus a couple of touchdowns, a good couple of touchdowns.
Yeah.
That should have been like we should all be raving this morning about Amari Cooper and how it was definitely no doubt the best trade we've ever made since that one way back when. But yeah, I'd just say that it's you're trying to pick something good out of a pile of flaming rancid shit. Basically, is the best way to put it. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I know it's a bit dramatic, but
yeah. Okay, well, I mean, a lot of the issues on the offense seem to be, I mean, it was just a scramble going in the trenches there. So with the O-line, I mean, there's some concerns there. Without a doubt, especially when we'll get into the mailbag. We had some questions about the O-line, but For yourselves, where did they go wrong and why? I mean, what's the issue behind why the O-line couldn't protect that and give them the time necessary?
I think it was two
Rich, I'll let you know.
things. Cheers,
Go on,
mate.
mate.
It was two things. I think it was one was just everyone was having an off day. Everyone decided to just get together and just lay a load of eggs like it was freaking Easter out there. It was ridiculous. The second thing, which is something that I've been low-key waiting for to happen, or for the fruit of this to bear labour, is that for the past couple of drafts, they haven't drafted anyone to go behind Tyron Smith. And that is a big, big mistake. They haven't added properly to the offensive line. And I get there are other needs on this team, but this O-line has been looking fragile, especially at that left side, for a long time. For the past few seasons, and they haven't done anything to address it. And now you're having problems. It was the Atlanta game the other year, and now this. There's no one there to pick up the slack. I mean, he was getting murdered. They knew it was going to be a weakness, and they attacked it all night long. And it bore fruit for them, and it's not surprising. And that wasn't helped by the fact that, like I said, everyone else just didn't really show up. Like, it didn't seem like everyone was themselves. It was crazy.
Definitely. Nobody looked like them, especially the first half. They definitely looked flat. But Jamie, I mean, any O-line concerns for you? What's going wrong there at the moment?
There's just such a drop off from who the starters are. So when Rich just mentioned there, you've got Tyron Smith, but when he's out, there's nobody really of a high standard that you would be comfortable saying this guy's going to have a really good game. And it seems like that across the whole line. It's kind of more of a plug and play. Let's get some guys in that can play guard, maybe can shift across and play tackle if we need. There's just that compared to everywhere else in the team. Sorry, I keep finishing. If Cooper's out, then you've got someone like Gallup that can come in and play to that high standard that Cooper would do. But there's nobody in those positions that can, and I think that's what really hurts us.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Seems to be there is a big drop off behind with the backups, and there always has been. I mean, I don't know whether that's perhaps that the Cowboys O-line, the starters are just such a high standard that when we get a backup, it just looks completely terrible. But another issue in the game, and it was something that popped up as well in the Saints game, is our wide receiver core. So we're getting drop passes, we're getting fumbles, we're getting miscues, tip balls coming in quite in the last two games quite often now. Is this something that's becoming more and more common with them and debilitating to the offense? Because it seems to be coming at crucial times. What do you think, Jay?
I think you get these issues all the time, don't you? I think everyone's got to take the blame. The receivers, it's their job. It's what they paid the big money for. And to be fair, as much as we all love Dak, sometimes some of his throws aren't the best, so they're not easy to catch. But so I don't think it's not on one person. I think it's collectively as an offense that they need to get better. And sometimes it's like the seam, like you'll see sometimes like in snooker, they'll always think a shot or two ahead, and it's sometimes the receivers look like they're thinking ahead of the catch rather than let's get it in and then let's worry about what's going to happen after. And that's where you sometimes get these, because there's just concentration is not there.
Okay. What about you, Rich? What do you feel on the wide receiver core with the drops?
Yeah, I tend to agree. I think he turned around and said himself, or loads of them have, they say they're taking the eye off the ball quite literally. They're not making the catches. They're thinking more about what they're going to do afterwards, and that's a credit to the defense, because they know that they're right there. They're right on top of them. They're putting pressure on them to know that they have to react almost before they've made the catch, and then obviously having catches. The crazy thing with these first 5 games is this part of the season would make a lot more sense if you inversed it. If they were playing this way in game 1 and 2, it would make more sense. And then they build up to how they played in the first couple of games. It would make a lot more sense. But this way around is just absolutely balmy. I think it is down to a case of, I mean, Gallup's just come back. Okay, that's fair enough. But like I said, Coop had a career day. Gallup did pretty damn well.
Yeah.
There were people making catches. There were people that they did struggle to get open, but there were still people getting open. I mean, I haven't gone back and watched the tape. Admittedly, it's a bit busy all day, but I don't remember seeing, and going back to the thing in the trenches, I was expecting them to send a lot of help down the left side. I was honestly expecting to see a bit of a rotation between Zeke and Witten just on the left side, just helping pick up. And I did see Zeke do a lot of blitz pickups, but not necessarily by design in terms of on the left side, shoring up the left side. It was I actually saw him do a bit more on the right by memory, but my memory's crap, admittedly. But with the wide receivers, it's very strange, especially when they've gone and spent all that time in the off-season that we were raving about. They went out and spent time together, making sure they were all in sync. And then, like I said, the first couple of games, they're brilliant catches being made all over the place. And then this, which the only thing you can really assume is like I said, it's down to the pressure, really.
I think
this is the first. I mean, the first couple of games really they played a bit like preseason game, like they were playing against preseason teams because they were teams that were just not that good. Now they're playing proper NFL football again. And it's been a bit of a shock to the system. And the first two teams they've played have been the Saints and then the Packers. So it's
there's been a lot on social media today. I don't know if any of you have seen it. Kind of, are we getting a little bit of ahead of ourselves after the first couple of games? Because if you actually look at it, the first few, no disrespect to them, but they weren't really good teams. And the Saints, they didn't have Drew Brees, but as you said earlier, the Saints are pretty well stacked around the field. And although the Packers are probably not as good as they have been over the last few years, Aaron Rodgers is kind of that type in it where it's a bit like Brady, where you don't really need high quality receivers. You just need receivers that can get open. So do you think we're probably getting ahead of ourselves and we're not actually as good as we really are?
I mean, yes and no, because don't forget, this is the head coach that turns around and says we don't listen to anything on the outside, and everyone repeats that mantra: we don't concentrate on everything else. He was specifically asked that question, and he said, I don't deal in that. We deal with going back to the drawing board and getting better and doing what we can to get better. So they only think one game ahead because that's all they've got to do. That's what you've got to concentrate on, which makes sense. I don't necessarily buy into that. I mean, it is probably a bit. I think it's probably more on the defensive side rather than the offensive side. But then in the last couple of games, we've seen the defense come into their own again, really. Aside from obviously the running side of things. But it's a bit crazy. Just the whole thing it was like last night against the Saints. They very much beat themselves. They just wasted opportunities and everything else. Last night they had a bit of a slip up and then they got punched in the mouth twice, and they just crumpled. There was, like Mike said, they were flat. There was absolutely no go in them. There was no fight until into the third quarter. They went in nothing at half time.
I think we said, didn't we, just before we come on air, that what the coverage went to the kind of the bench side in it, and they just looked defeated. And I personally, I sat there and was like, we aren't going to get back into this game because they just didn't seem that urgency and that fight and that hunger. They were sat with their heads in their hands, and they just didn't look interested in it. Obviously, the half-time team talk didn't even work.
Yeah, well, I mean,
the first bit of fight you saw was Garrett getting flagged.
Yeah, I know.
That was the first bit of proper
I don't think I've ever seen a head coach get flagged for throwing a flag.
No, but I loved it. I thought it was class.
But no, that was proper frustration. I mean, I think I wrote it down that after 43 minutes of play, the Cowboys were 31-3. It's wild, isn't it? But here's another one for you. He's kind of been left out of our mouths for a while until he's left 6 points on the field. Brett Maher, has he given him the boot this season then? What do you reckon, Rich?
I'm going to let Jamie go first because he's just frothing at the mouth, just ready to rage.
Go on, Jamie.
I'm done with him. I really am. And I think we touched on this just as the season was starting. And I think when we was having a chat earlier on today in the group, your kicker should be pretty much nailed on anything up to 40 yards. This guy is awful. My grandma could have made that one, some of them feel last night, but he's just awful. And yeah, it's 3 points, but sometimes when you're playing that bad, 3 points is something that could pick you up and give you the couple of backside you need. And it's just awful. It's time to move on.
What do you reckon, Rich? Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. He's got a proven track record now across more than a couple of games, seasons, of he doesn't perform under pressure, and you need a kicker that performs under pressure. It happens week in, week out in all these regular season games, and this ties back into. And I was having the same conversation again, following on from a post last night on Twitter about kickers coming across from rugby. And not to go back over it, because I know we did it weeks ago, but it just baffles me how vast the difference is between the two. And I know there's quite a few variables in there, but when you actually look at those variables, they're not that big. And even if you did have some drop-off from transferring across, I still genuinely think the quality would be a lot higher. I just cannot wrap my head around how the kickers are so generally so shite. When you have games every week that are decided by 3 points or less, there is always at least one. There's usually more than one every single week. From September through to January, there's always at least one every week that's decided by 3 points or less. And it's someone misses a freaking kick. And that deflates everything. Like you said, when you're down that much, you're looking for a spark from somewhere, just something to try and get the ball rolling. Making a drive and getting a field goal when you've had absolutely nothing going and you've had interceptions, that can be that kind of spark. And if he makes a long field goal as well, or even if he just, like you said, he just does his job, it's someone who's previously been inconsistent doing their job and doing their thing, then it's like it spurs people on. But it's absolutely terrible. It's not the first time he's done it, and it's not going to be the last. The only snag we got now is who the hell do you really bring in? Because there's no one great out there. I mean, we say all the best 32 kickers in the league are already on teams, but they're not even that great, in my opinion, in the grand scheme of things. I mean, we've got one of them, and we're saying we're willing to get rid of him because he's not that great. Who the hell are you going to bring in?
It's just so frustrating, and not to kind of harp on about Dan Bailey, but when he was on the field, you would kind of, if it was a field goal less than 45 yards, you'd go make a cup of tea because you were like, you're going to nail it.
Yeah.
And you genuinely get worried anything over 50 yards because he was capable, but there's other models. But this one, like I say, you get one 27, 28, 29, 30 yards, and it's just like, this guy is just going to miss. And it's not acceptable. Like you say, they have, and not saying it's an easy job, but it's the job, it's what he's paid for, it's what he practices all last season. They should be a given for up to 40 yards, and he's just And I think we've gone from having such a great kicker to an utter garbage one. It's not as if we've kind of transitioned down the line.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's definitely something that I think the Cowboys are going to look at in the off season. I can't see them making a change midway through the season. I think at the moment we're going to have to grin and bear it with him. But if we look at the Dallas defense, so who was your defensive player of the game, Rich?
Bloody hell. I'm genuinely struggling to pick someone out. I really, really am, because even the usual people like Tank and Quinn didn't do very good. Van Der Esch didn't do very good. I'd say probably Jalen Smith, just because he was still zipping around covering, and he was the only person I think I didn't see really completely fudge a tackle. I mean, Van Der Esch was out. He had his arms around Aaron Jones, and Aaron, didn't even run through his arms, just came out of his arms. And it was like, what happened there? It's absolutely crazy. Was it something like Quinn and Tank combined for
2 tackles?
Yeah, 2 tackles.
Shocking.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Jalen Smith, 9 tackles and a sack.
Yeah. I mean, realistically, it's got to be him, isn't it? Really, just because of the sack and the 9 tackles. But yeah, that was a terrible showing. Absolutely terrible.
All right, Jake, who's your defensive MVP then?
I think the stats you've just read off there for Jalen Smith just nails on, and that set a push because that side of the ball from the front line to the secondary was just garbage, and he was probably, could you say, the best out of a bad bunch? Is that probably the politest way to put it?
Okay. Well, I mean, it's your opinion, so you're entitled to say it, mate. But if we look at the defense, right, more specifically the issues we were getting on run defense, right? So look at what went wrong. But Ken Hughes, our number 1 fan of the show, he's asking, Big Ken, how do we solve the run defense problems? He's saying, obviously, we know that Xavier Woods was missing, but do we think the run defensive issues are getting concerning now?
I mean, yes, it's concerning because look at how much they leaked. I mean, they just let, no offense to it, but they just let Aaron Jones run through them for 4 touchdowns. That's concerning because this team is decent against the run. They've always been decent against the run. I mean, look what they did even last week. In another game they should have won but didn't. But look at what they did really. It wasn't absolutely terrible against the run in terms of making tackles. But last night they were just absolute dog shit. Just no one turned up and they weren't making any tackles in any way, shape or form. So on an off game the week before, it wasn't great, but it wasn't atrocious like it was last night. I mean, it's weird. Yeah, it's not good with Antoine Woods not in there, but I don't think there's any massive worries as long as they actually turn up and play and have some fight about them and actually punch people in the goddamn mouth and wrap them up and tackle them properly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, something I was looking into, Aaron Jones, right? He's got 20 career touchdowns. 5 of them are on the Cowboys.
Ugh.
Yeah.
A quarter of his career touchdowns are against the Cowboys. And I think another one was he's had 5 games of 100 yards rushing or more, 2 of them against the Cowboys.
You couldn't make it up, could you?
You know, he seems to have the Cowboys cards marked at the moment. I mean, it's a strange one. But you got anything to add on that on the run defense, Jay?
We're having a couple of conversations online at lunchtime, and one guy hit the nail on the head. I can't remember who I was speaking to. What we miss on that line, and this is not to say that none of them are good because that we have got a really good front line, but we miss one of them big, massive run stuffers in the middle. A guy that's, say, maybe a Gerald McCoy or a Ndamukong Suh kind of build with an Aaron Donald motor. And I can't remember. Was it the Bears game or was it something in the Vikings game? And they just had this big run stuffer up the middle, and it forced the running back to come inside, and the linebacker was following the run stuffer, and because he knew that he covered kind of one gap, there was only one other way to go, and we just don't seem to have that. And somebody else said it, that when we go for these defensive tackles, we sometimes go on a cheap side and we don't kind of go for the guy that we kind of need. We have more of a fill-in and let's just see how it goes. And I think that's what we're missing in the middle. Say that the end's fantastic. I mean, we could argue 2 of the best in the league. But although we've got some good guys in the middle, I don't think they're as high a standard as as what we probably need.
Yeah, I mean, they have tried to address it with Tristan Hill, but we have yet to see him sort of break in and make any moves there. But looking at the defense, right, there is a big difference between the two in the first half, especially the first quarter, where they leaked 17 points in comparison to the second half. The defense seemed to be making the stops, getting those 3 and outs, not necessarily forcing turnovers. But is there a reason? And it was something our old pal Lauren, she asked the question, why do we seem to start these games so slowly to begin with? The offense in this game, there were reasons, we've seen the tip passes, which seem to just take the air out of them. But is there a reason why the defense was so better in the second half and why we seem to start so slow, Reg?
I think it was just purely just a case of, like I said, they got backed into it. I think it was tying on to what Lauren said as well, that they got their backs were well and truly against the wall. They were getting squashed up against it. It was like a scene from bloody Star Wars or Indiana Jones. They're just getting squeezed and squeezed and squeezed. It's like, you're going to do something or you're completely buggered. And eventually they started to do something. But it's just mad that it's like you said, it's taking so long. And I don't know whether that's just because it's the start of games and, like we say, the first however many tries are always pre-scripted. Don't know if it's just a case of they've had our number on the first side of things and we've got to wait till we adapt. But then why are we waiting so long to adapt? And I don't know. I don't know if it's drive, discipline, all of those things, probably all of the above. I don't know. It's very, very weird. Like I said, this is not a bad defense. Even if you pedal things back, just look at the linebacking core. It's a good linebacking core. Even if you dial back from when we were saying, they're one of the best in the NFL, even if you say they're all right, that should not have happened last night. They should be able to make up for the difference, like you said, of not having a bruiser up in the middle. But they never, the edges were never even set. Green was pointing that out today. We're not setting the edge. Everything did not happen. They were completely flat across the board, offense, defense, in every manner until well into the second half. And then things started to go, and it was like one of those cars that's like chugging along, and it's just, it's on its last legs. And it started to get better and started to build momentum, and then just completely stalled out on both sides.
Yeah, I'm with you. I mean, personally, I think it's more of a. It seems to be like it's one of two sides for me. What I'm thinking, they're either over preparing or under preparing. So then, when they get off script, they just don't know what to do with themselves, and it takes till half time for them to sit down and methodically go through it, to find a way. Because then at that moment you can see them. I mean, we were talking about it earlier. They're just silent on the bench because nobody knows how to readjust until. And that's probably one of the reasons why Dak's so good in the third quarter. Why that third quarter phenomenon with him is so hot. But I mean, what about you, Jay? Is there a reason the defense came out better, and a reason, like Lauren asked, about us starting so slowly?
I don't know if this is going to be controversial, but I don't know if Green Bay just took the foot off the gas, that they'd seen that they had the beating of them, and they literally just manhandled us in that first half. Like you said, the punch was in the mouth so early on, and we just had no answer for it. And rather than let's go out there and run the board up even more, and let's not risk injury, it felt to me that Green Bay took the foot off the gas, and I think that's why it seemed like we played at such a higher level.
I need to go back and check the stats to see what the first half possession is like. But Green Bay in that game had 36 minutes of possession.
It was pretty much the same as before.
Yeah, nearly 37 minutes. And usually, like when you talk game script, that's the sort of time Cowboys have, possession-wise. They're a possession team. So, quite a crazy one, Sorry?
Wait. It goes to show running the ball what it does. They pull the Cowboys on us. It's not the first time it's happened. Yeah. But the crazy thing that, again, for the second week, we've got a second loss and a second win again, and rolling on again from the Miami game, is that we've shown now, I think 3 weeks in a row, we are capable of winning games in half a game's worth of football. The ball has moved that well. that you can do it. It's possible. This team can do it. But for some reason, they're not connecting. There's mistakes here and there. Penalties are creeping in. Whether even if you take the bad calls and the non-calls out of it, mistakes are creeping in, and for some reason it keeps stalling and it's not happening. But this team was capable of winning. They almost did it. They were capable of winning that game in half a game last night. They definitely could have done it against the Saints, and they did it against the Dolphins. I don't know it's the Dolphins, but they did it. They're starting slow and they're winning in half a game. So even though they are starting slow, they are capable once they get going of doing it. Mm-hmm. And the Patriots are kind of the same way. So it doesn't massively worry me in such a way. It's sort of you go out, we'll go through the paces, blah, blah, blah. Okay, that's what you're going to do. That's how you're going to play it. We got your number. Go, 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 go. That's all well and good. But when you're going to go, you need to actually go. You need to actually do something. And they just haven't been in the past 2 games. And it's frustrating. Yeah. That's the annoying thing, is that they can do it. They've shown, you can see they're able to do it. And the even more frustrating thing about last night is they nearly did it.
Mm-hmm. We touched on the stats, didn't we, earlier on? And I think if you look at just the quarterback stats, what was that? Something like 425 or something like that, and Drew Brees was he 257. If you just looked at those 2 stats alone, you would have thought that Dak Prescott was on the winning side last night.
Yeah,
I would love to see what the last time Aaron Rodgers threw for so little yards and won a game of that scoreline.
Yeah, but I mean,
I bet it's not. I bet it's quite a long time ago.
Dak nearly had double the amount of Aaron Rodgers' yards. Nearly double.
Their run game was fantastic. That's like Richard. That's what we normally do. You normally see that Zeke and kind of Pollard and that set the tone, and it makes it. Not that Dak's not a good quarterback. It makes Dak's job a lot easier because he's not having to throw as much, and he's not having to get as many yards. And they just played the perfect game to Green Bay last night.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me, going over, looking through some of the stats and figures, the issues with the Cowboys at the moment on defense is turnovers. Turnovers is just a killer. We're actually in turnover differential -4, which ranks nearly right down the bottom. In terms of takeaways that the Cowboys have gotten, we've only had 4, which ranks 24th. The turnover differential of -4, the only teams that have got a worse turnover differential than us, the Dolphins, the Giants, the Bengals, the Redskins, the Jaguars, the Falcons, who are going through a bit of a rough patch at the moment with injuries, and the Broncos.
Not good reading, is it?
It's horrible when
demoralising. To say the kind of standard that the defense kind of sets itself as well is it's just shocking.
Yeah. But yeah, let's move on from that before we depress ourselves too far and get into the mailbag. So we've got one from Steve Stafford. He asks, right, just a simple yes or no, because we'll try and rip through these questions before this show runs on for too long. Is it wise to replace Jason Garrett after half a season, or let him run out his contract and see how he goes after 16?
Let his contract run out.
It's got to be.
Yeah.
Rich?
I would generally say, let it run out. But you don't know what you get with Jerry Jones. I mean, he's done it before.
Yeah.
Again. I mean, I think he probably will. I think he'll ride it out, wait and see how things go, especially with this roster. But yeah, I'd be apprehensive to throw Chris Richard in, because as much as people are chucking crap at Dak and Meyer and Garrett, and I'm not being funny. Like I said earlier, the biggest spark in that second half for me was Garrett, and everyone else got behind him. There's a reason people follow him, reason people repeat what he says, and it's not just that your typical people. You get the young guys doing it as well, and there's reasons for that. He is a leader,
Yeah.
But if you're going to give him a load of crap, you've got to give it to Marinelli and you've got to give it to Chris Richard as well, because their guys were flat. I mean, these guys want to go out and giving themselves the title of hot boys and purge and making a brand and all the rest of it. That's fine, but you've got to produce on the field to have that. And they, like I said, they were completely flat.
Yeah.
Completely flat. The best single, the best unit from last night, I think, in terms of how they played, with the wide receivers. And that's mainly because of Cooper, just because of how he was getting open. But as we said, even they were dropping balls, and there was interceptions happening here and there.
Yeah.
But two of those interceptions, I think, were on wide receivers.
I think the only worry, like I say, if we extended him further than this current year, is if you look at the roster he's got, you could probably argue that up to these last few years, it's probably the best roster he's had since maybe the 2014 team. My worry is that we're going to waste a massively talented roster on seeing if Garrett is still the guy. At the minute, I still think he is. I'll probably address it in the season, but if we end up 8-8, or we just miss out on the playoffs with a winning record, I think more for the talent we've got, I think we'd have to move on.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the biggest issue we've got as well is he's just lost to Green Bay, who the Eagles won. So on common teams, the Eagles actually have the lead now. Next one, we got Stephen Mountford and Rich Gillett asked similar questions. So they're asking, how do we solve the quarterback protection problem? First 3 games, we're totally fine. The next couple, we lose a couple of players off the O-line. It all goes wrong and all falls apart. So what's going wrong with them? I know we touched on it, but I've kept this question in because I think one of the things I would like to know is that I think out of all the position groups, if you like, on a team, I think the most important in terms of cohesion of 5 people is the O-line. So I think as soon as you lose 1 or 2 or a couple get injured, that cohesiveness of those 5 guys just completely falls apart. I don't know what you think on that. What do you think?
Yeah, I'd agree. I mean, when you have more skilled positions, it is more, well, you call them units. Yeah, it is more of an individual thing. Whereas in the line and everything comes from the trenches, yeah, it does rely even more on teamwork in that aspect. I think quite simply the fact that you've got Tyron Smith. I mean, you're always going to have a drop down from Tyron Smith, but the drop down is quite spectacular. Maybe it's quite harsh, but there are clearly other guys. There are other teams out there with offensive lines that aren't as good as ours, and left tackles that aren't as highly regarded as ours, that do okay, don't lose like they did. I think it's purely just they haven't, like I said, they haven't invested in anyone behind him. He's been injury prone and getting knocked out for the past few years now. They haven't done anything to address it. The last time we drafted properly, like a high level pick on this line to maintain it as a strength of this team was Lyle Collins. I think, and he wasn't even picked per se.
Yeah, he was an undrafted free agent.
Yeah, exactly. That was the last time we took someone.
I wonder if it's the pressure, just of, like you say, that position. Because if you look at probably 3 of them, so you say Tyron Smith, arguably one of the top, if not the best, probably top 3 left tackles in the league. Frederick, you probably say the best centre in the league. Then you look at Zach Mine, arguably again one of the top. The top one, if not a top 3, and it's just there's such a high level that they're expected to play at when they get in there, and some of these players just aren't there. And I think it showed that it showed last night. Cameron Fleming was just awful, and to say what system he came from, what coach he played on under New England.
Yeah.
I mean, you would probably expect him to be able to be the one that would come in and would be able to just pick up and play left tackle at such a high level, because he's played for such a and such a great quarterback, such a great coach that demands a high motor from someone and someone that gives 110%. And it was just awful. And like I say, I just don't know if it's the pressure of who you're filling in for.
Okay. Yeah, no, I agree. A lot of pressure there, and, it's something we keep going back to, especially when people keep toting the Cowboys as a playoff / Super Bowl caliber team. There's a lot of pressure on that. We look at the last question then from the mailbag. We've got Derek Bergman. Do you think Dak needs to be more like Russell Wilson in respect to running more? This particular game, he rushed for 27 yards, but just as a little side note, because at the moment he seems to be passing quite a lot. When Dak is asked to throw more than 31 times in a game, we've gone 8. We've won 8 and lost 11.
I don't think it's necessarily he needs to run more. I think it's more a case of he needs to play what's in front of him more, and I think he showed that more last week because he's shown before he's very instinctual, and his throwing, his accuracy and his throwing is obviously actually getting better. But obviously he needs to do that more, and that's understandable with some of the wide receivers we got now. We've got people who can actually stretch the field. Obviously you want to use them, but I mean, it's a bit of a weird one. It's a bit of yes and no. I mean, if the last night was just absolutely terrible. Like I said, it's just nobody was doing their job right. I mean, there was plenty of times where it broke down and he went to run, but someone was already there and tackling him before he could get going. And it wasn't because he was hanging around, taking too long. Like sometimes he has done in the past. He's hung around too much and gone, shall I go? And then he runs. They were just there that quick.
Yeah.
The line just got beat. That's all it was. If the line had been able to hold up a bit more, he would have had more rushing yards last night. So I don't think it's a case of necessarily he needs to rush more. I think he does the right amount. I think it's just they got stopped last night. Because what did he have against the Saints, rushing wise?
I would have to go back and check. I haven't got the stats for the Saints game. I'll put it up on Yeah. I don't think. I'm not sure if he had that much in that game either. But
it wasn't a massive amount.
No, it wasn't huge.
But again, tons of pressure.
Yeah. But we'll give you the final say, Jay. If you want to break it down quickly, do you think he needs to rush more, or are you happy with his rushing?
I'm probably going to lean kind of what put my teeth in what Rich says. He's probably making them better decisions of when to go and when to stay. But then you look at it on the flip side of if he rushes more, then that's more opportunity for him to get hurt and take a hit. So if you're looking at paying your quarterback in the region of what $40 million would, depending on what the figures out there is, you're not going to put that commodity out there to take a lot of hits. And say if you just look at the hit last night on Paul Mason Rudolph, you don't want to put your quarterback in that position when he's out there, he's running, and he takes a massive hit, and then you're potentially losing for a season. So I think, it's probably more being smart about when you go and when you throw.
I agree. Yeah, there we are then. Well, that's our mailbag done and the post-game show. I hope we've helped with the healing, and we're all feeling a bit better. Bit of energy, and everyone feels a bit better, see? But we've got the Jets and the pre-game show coming up later this week. Just a quick shout out to a few other people who chucked some questions. So Gary Laird, Nick Bloomfield, and Wayne Westlake asking some draft questions as well. But we'll dive into that as draft season kicks in. We'll look at roster composition and some draft picks. Just a quick shout out as well to West Coast and Boss Cowboy. They had a long conversation with me in the middle of the week. So cheers for that, guys. But make sure you watch later this week with my co-host, Lauren. They've got a very special guest. I won't tell you her last name, but her first name begins with Taylor. So keep an eye out for that.
Name was Gamer.
I'm not giving it away. So the guests are coming in thick and fast. So we can't thank everyone enough for that, and obviously for everyone's support. Make sure you follow us as well on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, SoundCloud, YouTube.
Everywhere.
Yeah.
Oh, Jamie. God damn it. There's the line. Oh, God damn it.
But thank you very much, everybody. And we'll see you later this week. And we'll be talking about how the Cowboys are going to win. And everybody's healing will come back again. Woosa. Cheers, guys. Thank you, Jamie. Thank you, Reg.
Yes.
For now.
How about them Cowboys?